Hello friends, welcome to my YouTube channel. I am Dr. Mangesh Tushing and this is the second lecture of UV visible spectroscopy. In this particular lecture, we will learn about instrumentation of the spectrophotometer for UV visible spectroscopy and types of excitations. Friends, in last lectures we have seen the introduction to the spectroscopy. In this case, we have learned various terms which are used in spectroscopic analysis and spectroscopy, as well as we have seen types of spectroscopy and types of excitations. So in that type of spectroscopy, first is UV visible spectroscopy. The waves, the radiations which are used for this spectroscopy is a UV visible radiations. The range is 200 to 800 nanometer. So first we'll see the introduction to this UV visible spectroscopy. The electronic absorption spectroscopy measures the energy and probability of promoting a molecule from its ground state electronic state to an electronically excited state. Excitations involves moving an electron from occupied molecular orbital to higher unoccupied molecular orbital. Since an organic molecule typically has a numerous occupied and unoccupied molecular orbitals, many different electronic excitations are possible. That's why UV visible spectroscopy is used for qualitatively determination of functional group and according to the position and intensity of the absorption band. So friends, in UV visible spectroscopy there is a electronic excitations because energy is very high and wavelength is less, that is 200 to 800 nanometer only. So what will happen? There is a electronic excitations. Electrons are excited from an higher occupied molecular orbital to lower unoccupied molecular orbital. So there is a electronic excitations, and as we know that molecules have so many types of electrons, so many types of occupied and unoccupied molecular orbitals. So many different types of excitations are possible, like rotational excitations, electronic excitations, vibrational excitations. So these excitations are qualitatively used for detection of the functional group. What are the functional group present into the molecule? UV and visible spectroscopy provides an information about the structure of molecule that contains double bond or triple bond or conjugated bonds. So this spectroscopy can distinguish between conjugated and isolated dienes, between dienes and trienes, and between carbonyl group and alpha beta unsaturated cysteine. So it also distinguish the cis and trans isomer. So UV visible spectroscopy mainly is for the structures which contains a multiple bonds, a conjugated multiple bonds. So we can differentiate between isolated multiple bond and conjugated multiple bond, either that is carbonyl or double bond like alkene. So this information we are taking from this UV visible spectroscopy. UV visible spectroscopy can also distinguish between cis and trans isomers, that is geometrical isomers of the double bond. So this UV visible spectroscopy mainly is useful for the unsaturated compounds, that is the compounds which contains multiple bonds. So nature of UV, already we learned that nature of UV, the ultraviolet radiations is a part of electromagnetic radiations which bridges the gap between longest wavelength X-rays and shortest wavelength visible light. The UV region which extends from 4 to 400 nanometer, and it is divided into near UV, that is near UV, that is 200 to 400 nanometer, and far UV, that is 4 to 200 nanometer. So these are the two regions, near UV and far UV. Near UV means 200 to 400 nanometer and far UV means 4 to 200 nanometer. So these are the shortest wavelength and higher energy radiations. Now we will see what is vacuum apparatus, vacuum UV apparatus. This UV apparatus, that is vacuum UV apparatus, is used for the study of far UV radiations, means 4 to 200 nanometer radiations, as it is absorbed by the air because of moisture oxygen, nitrogen, carbon dioxide, the gases which are present into the atmospheric air. Therefore, this region is called as vacuum region. So if you want to take the UV visible spectroscopy, then what you do, remove the air from the apparatus, UV apparatus, so that absence of air, then that is called as vacuum UV apparatus. So our gases which are present into the atmosphere like oxygen, nitrogen, carbon dioxide, they contains a multi-bond and they absorbs in case of 4 to 200 nanometer. That's why we have to use vacuum UV for the measurement of below 200 nanometer absorbance. Furthermore, glass absorbs radiations of the wavelength less than 300 nanometer. Whatever the glass cuvette we are using for the sample holding, a sample holder cuvette, that also absorbs radiations below 300 nanometer. Therefore, quartz optics and quartz sample holder are used for this instrument to avoid the interference of this absorbance of the glass. Consequently, this region 200 to 300 nanometer is referred as quartz region. So this region is called as quartz region. So absence of air, that is called as vacuum UV apparatus. The construction of traditional UV visible spectrometer is very similar to a common spectrophotometer. For example, IR also instruments are very similar, which contains the functions like sample handling, irradiations, detection and output that are required for the the spectrum. See, here is the simple schematic diagram that covers a modern UV spectrophotometer. So it has two UV visible sources which emits lights. Those lights goes to the reflectors to monochromator converts this polychromatic light into monochromatic narrow beam. This goes to the splitter, so this splits this narrow beam into two equal halves. So one beam is going to the sample which contains a reference or a solvent plus sample, while second half of the beam that goes to the reference, so it contains solvent or reference, and then both the beams are going to the detector. Detects will detect detects the difference or relation between incident radiations as well as transmitted radiations, and that evaluates by the computer system and will get the spectra, wavelength versus absorbance. Absorbance is log to the base 10, that is I0 incident radiation divided by transmitted radiations, that is absorbance. Now we'll see working of spectrophotometer. So there are two sources are required to scan the entire UV visible band. Deuterium lamp covers the UV, that is 200 to 300 nanometer, while tungsten lamp that covers around 330 to 700 nanometer. So if these two sources are there, then it covers entire UV visible band, that is 200 to 800 nanometer. Then this light goes to the monochromator by using reflectors. So monochromator like grating systems or prism that converts polychromatic light into monochromatic light, and that narrow beam gradually changes small bands of radiation sends to the beam splitter. This beam splitter sends a separate bands to the cell containing sample solution and reference solution. Then the detector measures the difference between the transmitted light through the sample, that is I, versus the incident light, that is I0, and sends this information to the recorder. Time is required to cover the entire UV visible band due to mechanism of changing the wavelengths. So it took some more time. Then we will see now sample handling. So virtually all UV spectra are recorded in a solution form. So our sample whose UV visible spectra to be determined, that should be in a solution form. So that should be soluble into proper solvent, dilute proper solvent. Then cells can be made of plastic, glass or quartz. So whatever the sample holders, that is called as cuvette. So that should be made up from plastic, glass or quartz. But mostly the quartz is transparent in full range, that is full band 200 to 800 nanometer range. That's why quartz cuvettes are used for the solvent holding, while plastic and glass are only suitable for the visible spectra. That are only visible spectra because plastic and glass absorbs in a UV region, that is below 200 nanometer. Even glass absorbs around 300 nanometer. So it may interfere into the absorbance of the compound which absorbs at UV region. That's why we should not use this plastic and glass cuvettes in terms of determination of UV spectra if our absorbing material is absorbed below 300 nanometer. This is the shape of typical cuvette. This is a sample cell. You can call it as a cuvette. The diameter, inner diameter is around 1 centimeter, and it is made up of quartz, fully transparent. You should not absorb any radiations because that interferes the determination of the spectra of particular sample. The solvent must be transparent. So whatever the solvents we are using for preparation of the solution for a material or a substance or compound, the solvent must be transparent in the region to be observed. म्हणजे सॉल्व्हेंटनी UV विजिबल रेज ॲब्झॉर्ब नको करायला पाहिजे किंवा ते आपल्याला इंटरफेअर करतील आपल्या स्पेक्ट्रामध्ये. म्हणजे आपल्याला तर कंपाऊंडचा पाहिजे पण दिसेल कशाचा, सॉल्व्हेंटचा. Solvent must be transparent, so they should not absorb the radiations, UV radiations. The wavelength where solvent is no longer transparent, that refers to as the cutoff. So if solvent starts absorbs radiations, that wavelength is called as cutoff. Since spectra are only obtained up to 200 nanometer, solvents typically only need to lack of conjugations, pi system and carbonyl. If we want to take a spectra for particular compound, then our whatever the solvents we are going to use, that should not contain any pi conjugated system or any double bonds or carbonyl systems. Then only we have to use the solvents for the UV visible spectroscopy. So these are the general solvents which are used into the UV visible spectroscopy, like acetonitrile, chloroform, cyclohexane, 1,4-dioxane, 90% ethanol, 1N-hexane, methanol, isooctane, water. So these are the various solvents we can use, and these are their cutoff wavelengths. So after these wavelengths, these solvents absorbs the radiations. So we should not use these solvents also when our substance absorbs at this position. So for UV visible spectroscopy, use such solvents which does not contain any pi bonds, any double bonds or any conjugation. So better are 1,4-dioxane, octane, N-hexane and water. These are the best solvents for the UV visible spectroscopy. Now we will see some of the fundamental laws which are useful into the spectroscopy for determination of the absorbance. What is absorbance, what is transmittance, what is incident light, what is transmitted light, we will see in these slides. Suppose this is a sample holder, that is cuvette, which contains a sample whose concentration is C. The diameter of this cuvette or sample holder is B. Now these are the incident radiations, that is I0, and then these are the transmitted radiations, I. It means that IA, these are the radiations absorbed by the sample. Some of the radiations are reflected from this cuvette or sample, that is IR. So in this way, I0, that is radiant power of incident light, IR, that is radiant power for reflected light, IA, that is radiant power of absorbed light, and I, radiant power of transmitted light. Thus I0 is equal to IR plus IA plus I. So incident light is equal to reflected light plus absorbed light plus transmitted light. Reflected light, that is Ri, radiant power, is negligible, that is below 4% or 3%. So we can neglect that one. So what will happen? So I0 is equal to the Ia, radiant power absorbed plus radiant power transmitted. Lambert's law in 1760 says that whatever the incident radiations absorbed by the sample is directly proportional to the thickness of the cuvette sample holder. While Beer's law, that is 1852, tells us the radiant power absorbed by the substance is directly proportional to the concentration of the sample. That's why absorbance is equal to log to the base 10 I0 upon I. That is ratio of incident radiations to the transmitted radiations. Now Lambert's-Beer's law, combined law of Lambert's and Beer's law. First, that absorbance. What is absorbance? So absorbance, this term is previously known as optical density, and it is defined as the log of ratio of intensity of incident light to the transmitted light. So A is equal to log to the base 10 I0 upon I. Right? A is equal to log to the base 10 I0 upon I. I0 the incident radiation, I transmitted radiations. The Beer-Lambert's law states that the absorbance of the sample is directly proportional to its concentration and to the path length of the light, that is B, through the cuvette. It means that A, that is absorbance, is directly proportional to the C, concentration of the sample, into B, that is the path length, the length of the light, the diameter of the cuvette. So this equation becomes A is equal to epsilon into C into B. Epsilon, that is the constant absorptivity. B is cm, so path length is in cm, concentration is in gram per liter, then whatever the constant is called as absorptivity, and it is represented by a symbol small a. That's why absorbance is equal to A, B into C. If the concentration is in mole per liter and B, that is path length, is centimeter, then this constant is called as molar absorptivity and represented by the symbol epsilon. So absorbance is equal to epsilon into B into C. Now if B, that is path length, is 1 centimeter, C, the concentration is 1 mole per liter, then the absorbance is equal to a molar absorptivity, and that is called as specific absorbance. If the path length is 1 centimeter, concentration is 1 mole per liter, then the molar absorptivity can be called as specific absorbance. So A is directly proportional to the C. So for example, for a given system, the thickness of medium and absorbance of the medium is directly proportional to the concentration of absorbing species, that is A directly proportional to the C. So if all the systems are constant, then absorbance is directly proportional to the concentration. Now we'll see energy absorption and electronic excitations. UV and visible radiations are more energetic. Wavelength is small, energy is more. The absorption of this compound brings about electronic excitations, and the process of electronic excitations accompanied by large number of vibrational and still large number of rotational changes. So in UV visible spectroscopy, it absorbs the UV visible radiations. Those are very energetic. So what will happen? Electrons are excited from ground level to higher level, excited level. So there will be the electronic excitations. But as energy is high, so in the process of this electronic excitations, some kinds of rotational as well as vibrational changes into the molecule, and rotational and vibrational excitations also takes place. So because of that one, what will happen? it is hardly possible to resolve all these spectral bands which gets mixed. Which are the spectral bands? Electronic excitation, vibrational excitations, as well as rotational excitations. So these bands will get mixed together, and therefore the bands in UV visible spectrophotometer or UV visible spectrum are relatively broad. So the peaks observed into the UV visible spectrum, those are not sharp, those are broad, and the total energy required for the excitations of the molecule from ground state to the excited state is given by the equation, that is E, the energy of excitation, is equal to E electronic plus E vibrational and plus E rotational. So whatever the energy is absorbed for the electronic excitations, so in that case electronic excitations will be there, vibrational excitations will be there, as well as rotational excitations will be there, and the separation of these three bands will be very difficult, those getting mixed to each other, and that makes a UV visible spectrum relatively broad than other spectrums like IR, NMR, C13, ESR. So all these spectral bands are sharp while UV visible spectrum is broad. See here, so this is the ground state electronic level and this is the excited state electronic level. So electrons are excited from ground state to excited state, but simultaneously there are rotational excitations are also possible. Each electronic level contains so many vibrational levels and each vibrational levels contains so many rotational levels. So if energy is absorbed, there are some rotational excitations will be there, some vibrational excitations will be there, and some electronic excitations will be there. While doing the electronic excitations, it may possible there are some vibrational excitations, one vibrational level to the another vibrational level, or it may possible that rotational excitations are there. So one rotational level to another rotational level. So in this way, each electronic level contains so many vibrational level and each vibrational level contains so many rotational levels. So if energy is absorbed by the molecule, so there are three types of excitations will be there: electronic excitations, vibrational excitations, as well as rotational excitations. And because of this one, the peak will be broad. See here, peak is broad. So whatever the maximum height or maximum absorbance will be there, that wavelength is called as lambda max. The maximum absorbance at this wavelength is called as lambda max. For this particular compound, that lambda max is 217 nanometer. So maximum absorbance, and you have to see the wavelength at which the maximum absorbance, and that wavelength at which maximum absorbance will be there, absorption will be there, then that wavelength is called as lambda max. Now we'll see the electronic excitations. The absorption of electromagnetic radiations of the wavelength 200 to 750 nanometer, that is UV and visible spectrum, can cause the excitations of electrons from occupied bonding molecular orbital, that is lower energy, to unoccupied anti-bonding molecular orbital, and this excitations is called as electronic excitation. So in UV visible spectroscopy, electrons are getting excited. Electrons absorb this energy from the UV visible spectrum and increases its energy and goes to the excited level, that is lower molecular orbital to unoccupied anti-bonding molecular orbital, and this excitations of the electrons is called as electronic excitations. So there are three kinds of electrons present into the molecule. As we know that in organic molecules there are the electrons present, three kinds of electrons are there, that is sigma electrons which are present in a sigma bonds, pi electrons which are present into pi bonds, and n, that is non-bonding electrons, that is present as a unshared electrons, unshared electrons as a lone pair. So whatever the lone pairs are present on the atoms are called as non-bonding electrons. So there are three types of such electrons: sigma electrons, pi electrons, and non-bonding electrons. Sigma and pi electrons have corresponding higher energy anti-bonding orbital, that is sigma star and pi star. but there is no higher energy anti-bonding molecular orbital for the particular non-bonding electrons. So we'll see in details electronic excitations. See here, this is the atomic orbital of particular molecule. This is also atomic orbital of particular molecules, and these are the occupied levels like sigma bonding level, pi level. So these are the molecular orbitals. Energy is higher, so lower is energy less, higher means energy is high. So these are the occupied atomic orbitals. So these are the sigma bonding electrons, these are the pi bonding electrons, while these are the anti-bonding unoccupied levels, that is pi star and sigma star. Pi star and sigma star, and this is the N, that is non-bonding electrons, lone pair of electrons. So there are excitations are possible. The absorption of electromagnetic radiations by the organic molecule in UV and visible region involves the promotion of electrons from the sigma, pi and N from ground state to higher energy state, that is sigma star and pi star. So electrons are excited from sigma level, pi level, sigma bonding orbital, pi bonding orbital and non-bonding electron pair. Those excited to the either goes to the sigma star or pi star, that is unoccupied levels, excited levels. The wavelength of absorption depends upon the energy difference. The wavelength of absorption depends upon the difference in energy level between the bonding orbital and anti-bonding orbital. Suppose sigma bonding electrons are excited to the sigma anti-bonding level. So the wavelength of absorption, it depends upon the energy gap between sigma bonding molecular orbital to the sigma anti-bonding molecular orbital. So this energy gap decides which wavelengths of the absorption will be there. ही जेवढी एनर्जी लागते तेवढीच absorb होते, that gives us information about the bonds which are present, information of the excitations which are happens. So suppose this is E2, higher energy level, and this is E1, that is lower energy level. So delta E, the difference in energy, that is E2 minus E1. The relation between wavelength and energy, that is E is equal to hc upon lambda. hc upon lambda. So energy is inversely proportional to the lambda, that is wavelength. This relation tells that smaller the energy requires the excitation of the electrons, larger is the wavelength of absorption. So if energy is less, suppose pi to pi star energy is less than the sigma to sigma star. If energy is less, then wavelength will be higher, because the relation between them, energy and wavelength, is inversely proportional. They are inversely proportional to each other. So as the energy gap increases, wavelength decreases. As the energy gap decreases, wavelength increases. The value of delta E depends upon the molecular structure. Hence, indirectly, the value of lambda max is also dependent upon the molecular structure. So whatever this energy gap, the energy required to excite the electrons from bonding molecular orbital to anti-bonding molecular orbital, that depends upon the structure of the molecule. So if you know the lambda max, then that is depends upon the molecular structure. Thus, by studying the UV visible spectrum, that is lambda max, we can deduce, we can assign the structure of unknown compound. The relative energies for the transition are in a following order, that is sigma to sigma star requires higher energy than N to sigma star, then pi to pi star, then En to pi star. See the gap between sigma to sigma star, that is higher, so it requires higher energy because delta E is higher, so wavelength required is less. Then N to sigma star, so the transitions required more energy than pi to pi star and N to pi star. see pi to pi star. So it requires a higher energy. So this is the order and this is the n to pi star. So these are the 4 transitions are possible in a electronic excitations. So sigma to sigma star requires higher energy than n to pi star, requires higher energy than pi to pi star, than n to pi star. So now we will learn one by one of these excitations. First we will start with the sigma to sigma transition. So sigma bonding orbital to sigma anti-bonding orbital transitions. In this type of transitions, the promotion of electrons from bonding sigma orbital to anti-bonding of sigma pi star orbital takes place. So sigma to sigma star transitions will be there. The electrons from sigma bond are tightly held, and hence sigma to sigma star transitions is very high energy process, and absorption takes place at very short wavelength, that is 150 nanometer. The examples belonging to this class are saturated hydrocarbons like methane, ethane, propane and other paraffins. As absorption is beyond the range of ordinary spectrophotometer and not recorded by the UV visible spectrum. Therefore, N-hexane can be used as a solvent for UV visible spectroscopy. So in a sigma to sigma star transitions, so electrons are transmitted from sigma bonding level to sigma star, that is sigma anti-bonding orbital level. These electrons are transmitted. This gap is very high. The sigma bonds are very strong bonds. So whatever the electrons in a sigma bonds are held very tightly. So these transitions require a higher energy. So if higher energy, wavelength will be short. That wavelength is around 150 nanometer. The examples for that one, all the molecules contains a sigma bond. So skeleton of the organic molecules with the sigma bond. So all these molecules absorbs in this region, that is 150. But our spectrophotometer has a limitations that won't determine below 200 nanometer. So what will happen? Automatically whatever this absorption due to sigma bond or sigma bonding electrons, that are neglected. That's why we are using a N-hexane for the UV visible spectroscopy as a solvent, because N-hexane absorbs below 150 nanometer, and whatever this absorption is won't recorded by our spectrophotometer, ordinary spectrophotometer. That's why it can be used for the solvent, as a solvent in UV visible spectrophotometry, that won't interfere in our absorbance of the substance. So these electrons are migrated from sigma bonding orbital level to sigma anti-bonding molecular orbital. So suppose this is sigma bonds between carbon and carbon. These are the sigma bonding electrons. Those goes electron into the anti-bonding molecular orbital. So this observed into the alkanes like methane, ethane, propane. So all the carbon-carbon single bonds, these transitions will be there. Next is a pi to pi star transition. So in this type of transitions, the promotion of electron from bonding pi orbital to anti-bonding pi star orbital takes place. So from pi to anti-bonding pi star orbital, these transitions will take place. The compounds having multiple bonds. So obviously if pi electrons are there, there should be pi bonds, right? So compounds having multiple bonds, pi bonds, undergoes pi to pi star transitions. For example, alkenes, alkynes, carbonyl compounds, nitriles and aromatic compounds. So multiple bonds should be there, pi bond should be there, then only this pi to pi star transitions will be there. Alkenes, ethylene generally absorbs in the region 170 to 205 nanometer, and it is a far UV region. However, the molecules containing 2 or more conjugated double bond absorbs above 200 nanometer, that is near UV. So if only isolated double bond is there, that absorbs below 205 degrees nanometer. But if you are increasing the conjugation, if you are increasing the double bonds which are present into the conjugation, then it absorbs about 200 nanometer, that goes to the even in near UV as well as visible region. That's why the spectroscopy is called as UV visible spectrophotometer. So these are the pi bonds and these are the pi bonding electrons. So this p orbitals are parallel overlap, pi bonds will form. These electrons excited to the antibonding, that is pi antibonding molecular orbital. So this is the transitions. Now third will be n to sigma star transition. So in this type of transition, the promotion of the electrons from non-bonding n orbital to higher energy antibonding sigma star orbital takes place. So in this case, what will happen? So this is the sigma to sigma star transitions, it's okay. But n, this is the non-bonding electrons. These non-bonding electrons are transmitted from non-bonding electrons to the sigma star, and this type of transition is called as n to sigma star transition. So this can be possible only if the compounds containing non-bonding or unshared electrons present on heteroatoms such as nitrogen, oxygen, sulfur or halogen, etc. undergoes n to sigma star transitions. So for example, alcohols, amines, alkyl halides, thiols undergo this type of transitions. So these transitions are less energetic because this energy gap is very small. These transitions are less energetic and hence occurs at longer wavelength. Suppose here is the some type of amines, so CN single bond. So this is the sigma to sigma star transition. Okay, but if nitrogen is there, then there will be the lone pair of electrons. So this lone pair of electrons is transmitted to the antibonding sigma orbital. So this is the sigma star, and this transition is called as n to sigma star transitions. N to sigma star transitions, the epsilon value for these transitions are very small. Hence absorption is very weak. So the epsilon value means the probability of these excitations is very less. So what will happen? The height of the peak is very small. The peak of absorption is very weak, and therefore from the point of view of the structure determination, the n to sigma star transitions are very less important because these peaks are very weak, short heighted, because the probability of these excitations n to sigma star transitions is very less. That's why the importance of these transitions for the structure determination is also very less. The fourth transition is n to pi star transitions. Non-bonding electrons to anti-bonding pi orbital. In this type of transitions, the promotion of electrons from non-bonding electrons, that is n electrons, to the higher energy anti-bonding, that is pi star orbital, takes place. Compounds containing double bond involves the heteroatoms like C double bond O, C double bond S, C double bond N, N double bond O. So these type of bonds are there. Then there are non-bonding electrons because heteroatom is there, and so these compounds containing double bond involving the heteroatom undergoes n to pi star transitions. The n to pi star requires a minimum energy because the energy gap is very small, which in terms of shows absorption towards the longer wavelength. If energy gap is small, wavelength will be higher. It absorbs at longer wavelength. So for example, see here. So the compounds which contains a CO bond, CO double bond. So there is a pi bond. So pi bonding electrons are there. There is a heteroatom. So heteroatom contains a lone pair. So there is a non-bonding electron pair is also there. So there are two transitions are possible. One is pi to pi star transition is there, and one n to pi star transitions are there. So if the compound contains multiple bond with the heteroatom, so two transitions are possible. That is pi to pi star transition as well as n to pi star transition. Now suppose this is CO bond. So that is a pi bond. So these are the p orbitals of oxygen and p orbital of carbon overlaps parallel. So there is a pi bond contains pi electrons. So these pi electrons are, and this is the CO, and oxygen contains lone pair electrons, and these are the anti-bonding, that is pi orbital, pi molecular orbital. So electrons, there are two types of transitions are possible. N2 sigma star transitions that occurs at around 285 nanometer, and pi to pi star transitions that occur at 188 nanometer. So pi to pi star energy gap is very high, so the wavelength is very small. But the N to pi star, this energy gap is less, so wavelength is higher than this one, 285 nanometer. So these two types of transitions are possible when the heteroatom is with the pi bond. Now we will see the types of electronic excitations. So see here, suppose this is the carbonyl absorption spectra, that is UV spectrum of acetone in hexane. So it shows two types of absorption, because one is because of pi to pi transition, one peak is because of pi to pi transition, and second is because of N to pi star transitions. So out of four types of electronic transitions, we are mostly concerned with the N to pi star and pi to pi star transitions, which are less energetic and absorption occurs in UV region. The relative energies are following order, as we know that sigma to sigma star more energetic than the N to sigma star, then pi to pi star, then N to pi star. Now this is the example of acetone. Acetone shows two absorption band. One is around 190 nanometer, epsilon value is 100, and the other is around 180 nanometer, epsilon value is 15. The absorption at longer wavelength, that is 180, is due to N to pi star transition, which requires a less energy. That's why wavelength is higher. While the absorption at shorter wavelength, that is 190, is due to pi star transitions, which requires higher energy. That's why wavelength is less as compared to the N to pi star transitions. The value of extinction coefficient, that is epsilon, molar absorptivity or extinction coefficient, for the N to pi star transitions are very small, because N to pi star transitions are very weak, because this molar absorptivity tells us the probability of the electrons which shows these transitions. If this transitions probability high, then epsilon value will be high. If the probability of transition is very less, then epsilon value is less. So epsilon value is here is 100. It means that the probability of pi to pi star transitions will be higher than N to pi star transitions. Even though this is less energetic, but the probability of these electrons, that is non-bonding electrons to pi bond anti-bonding molecular orbital, this transitions probability will be less. Now we will see the significance of epsilon value, that is molar absorptivity. Suppose this is the molecule acetone. So it contains a pi bond as well as oxygen is there, so non-bonding electrons are there. So it shows the two types of transitions. One is N to pi star transitions, that is weak transition, and it absorbs at 280 nanometer. And second one is pi to pi star transitions. This is the strong transition, epsilon value is 100 and it absorbs at 190 nanometer. So what are the significance of the molar absorptivity? What are the uses? What the information we are getting from this epsilon value? The epsilon value indicates the probability of excitations of the electrons. The probability of excitations of the electron. If epsilon value is 100, then it indicates that the probability of excitations of these electrons is very high. The peak of acetone at a longer wavelength, that is 280 nanometer, has epsilon value is 15. This peak is weak. This peak is due to the N to pi star excitations, and this shows that the probability of these excitations is very low. So very less electron shows these excitations. The peak at shorter wavelength, that is at 190 nanometer, and has extinction coefficient 100. This peak is due to pi to pi star excitations and has a high probability. So if the epsilon value is high, then excitations probability very high. In general, all N to pi star excitations takes place at higher wavelength, low energy, but has a lower probability of excitations. On the other hand, pi to pi star transitions requires lower wavelength, higher energy, but their probability is high. Epsilon value are also affected by the solvent polarity. Polar solvent increases the epsilon value for the pi to pi star transition, whereas non-polar solvent increases the epsilon value for the n to pi star transitions. So the probability of the pi to pi star transitions will increase in polar solvents, while the probability of n to pi star transitions will increase in non-polar solvents. Thank you friends. Thank you for the watching.